I would like to start by introducing you to today's guest speakers. I am joined by Baynton, who is a Program Director with the Great West Life Centre for Mental Health in the Workplace. Marianne also serves as a member of our Mental Health Commission of Canada's Psychological Health and Safety Advisory Committee. She's also a co-chair for the Technical Committee on the National Standard for Psychological Health and Safety in the Workplace. Linda Brogden joins us from University of Waterloo. She is an occupational health nurse at the university and encounters employees on a daily basis who are affected by psychological health issues. After reviewing the draft of the National Standard for Canada for Psychological Health and Safety in the Workplace, she recognized the value of implementation. She is currently working with the committee at the university to begin implementing the standard, and that's what we'll hear more about today. Thank you very much, Marianne and Linda, for joining us today for a discussion on where to begin implementing psychological health and safety in the workplace.
Happy to be here, Samantha.
Me too.
So firstly, I'm going to give a little bit of background information. Then Marianne will talk about where we should be beginning as organizations. Linda will then take us through, how do our organizations take stock of where we are at? And then finally, we should have some time for questions. Also, I should remind you that this is a town hall format, so please do ask your questions by using the chat function of the webinar. We will be trying to answer your questions periodically throughout the webinar, and of course, answer some at the end. So just to start us off, the National Standard of Canada for Psychological Health and Safety in the Workplace can be downloaded through our partners' websites listed here. The tool is aimed at helping employers create and maintain healthier workplaces. As many of us are aware, the standard actually was released in January of this year. In terms of how we got here, for years, much of the original work related to psychological health and safety was actually done by Bill Wilkerson and Michael Wilson of the Global Business and Economic Roundtable on Addiction and Mental Health. The Mental Health Commission of Canada was created in 2007, and eventually we asked expert Dr. Martin Shane to conduct a series of reports for us. These are all available on our website. Shane found that there are 7 areas of law trending towards holding employers increasingly responsible for providing a psychologically safe workplace. Although resources were available for employers and employees, work continued, and it was recognized that there were no clear national guidelines. In 2009, a stakeholder conference was held with participants from business, labor, clinicians, and other interests. It was unanimously determined that such a standard was in fact needed. In early 2011, an agreement was reached to begin the process of developing a national standard of Canada. The standard was developed through a consensus process and is accredited by the Standards Council of Canada prior to its release. Workplace is one of the Mental Health Commission of Canada's 5 priority areas. The Mental Health Strategy for Canada, proposed by the Commission, notes that workplaces need more capacity to support people that experience mental health problems on the job. And that's why we've led the development of a voluntary national standard for psychological health and safety in the workplace. Our focus has been driving the adoption of the standard, showcasing leading organizations through things like video testimonials and our case study project, in which we take an in-depth look at what organizations are actually doing today. The intention behind today's webinar, Where Do I Begin, as well as our webinar series, which we'll be continuing, is the exact same thing. We would like to drive the adoption of the standard and the themes within it. Should your organization like to be a part of this project, a video testimonial, or the case study project, please do speak with me directly, and you can email me. My email is at the bottom of the screen. The next town hall webinar will be August 28th, and it will be focusing on communicating the message. So please save the date and join us. So Marianne, let's talk a little bit about how we get started. In order to effectively address psychological health and safety, where should organizations be starting from?
Samantha, I think there's lots of different starting points. In my field, we talk about beginning where the client's at. In other words, if you're an organization who is ready to go, then jump in and go. But if you're an organization that has a lot of competing demands, a lot of different things on the go, and thinking there is just no way we can start in on some great big thing like a standard on psychological health and safety, then don't do it. Do what you're able to do that's within your influence or control. Everyone's going to hear Linda's story, and I think it's fantastic in that Linda is not the dean. She's not the president of the university. She is a nurse who is really seeing on the ground the effects of a psychological health and safety impact on people. And yet she's able to champion it. So you start where you're able to, and on the slide you'll see some ideas. One of them is if they're worried about, let's not open that can of worms, let's not jump into that, because if we talk about it, then people are going to have higher expectations of us, then look at the things you're already doing. Are you already starting to orient people to the work in a way that helps them to understand the culture? Well, that's got something to do with psychological health and safety. Do you already recruit, hire, and train people for the psychological demands of the job? Then you're already doing something. When you promote people to management positions, are you thinking about their emotional intelligence and their ability to deal with employee concerns and issues? Then you're already doing something. And even when you get down to when we're doing layoffs or terminations or redeployment, are we thinking about how we support people on their way out or on their way to a new job? Then you're already doing something. What you can do is start to look at what already exists and celebrate that. That's a great way to open up the leaders and other people's eyes to the fact that we've always thought about psychological health and safety. We just didn't call it that. You can also take a tool like the Audit Tool that's in the standard itself, which I'm not sure whether Samantha said it, but the standard's free right now for a limited time, so you can download it at no cost. But there's an audit tool in there that helps you review what you're already doing. There's a document that was created by the Mental Health Commission of Canada called Elements and Priorities Towards a Psychologically Safer Workplace that helps you think about every process that you have in the workplace and the impact it has on psychological health and safety. You can also, if you have the ability, just approach the senior leadership and start talking about how they walk the talk. Because we do know that if the senior leader says, what's important to me is the well-being of my employees, and I'm going to recognize and I'm going to measure how well my frontline managers do this, you can bet those frontline managers are going to take it seriously. So that's a great, inexpensive approach, just have them speak out about it. There's a lot of other things you can do. If your role includes training, just start to embed this in your existing training. If your role is about crunching numbers, start to collect the data around grievances, around turnover, around disability and absences, and start to look at what that might, how that might be influenced by psychological health and safety practices and how you might be able to save your organization money. So there's lots of ideas, Sam. I think the thing is not to have paralysis by analysis, but rather to think, where's an opportunity for me to contribute to what the strategies and goals of my organization are now, and then do it.
Perfect. So would you say, I mean, in speaking with various organizations, because I know you do this all the time, Marianne, big and small, some have asked, is it better to take a baby step or is it better to take a big leap?
So, Samantha, I'm the kind of person that you go big or go home. And I'm very fortunate to have people around me who say, but have you really thought about this? And will pull me back in order to make decisions that might be a little more reasonable in the end. And I think there's value for both. If you are the senior leader, if you have that decision-making authority, or if you have influence, of course, the optimal way is to start at the top, look at the bigger picture, and then begin to make changes all the way through. But I would say there's very few organizations where that's practical or reasonable. And so taking a baby step is really how you get the organization prepared to branch out to the bigger steps. The thing that I really want to say, though, is whether you're taking the big leap or whether you're taking baby steps, the really important thing is start to engage other people. You can't do it yourself, so start to engage as many people as you can in getting involved, in starting to champion the idea of improving psychological health and safety in the workplace so that it becomes part of the norm, part of the culture.
Right. And Marianne, what if we are already providing some psychological health and safety in our organization, but we know that we need to improve? What do we do then?
Right. So I think the first thing is, as I said before, recognize and celebrate the success that you've already had. You're already doing something. Say to your employees, thank you so much for what you've contributed to having a great workplace. We want to have continual improvement, and we'll keep working towards it. Why that's important is because people don't want things done to them. They want things done with them. It's kind of a foundational concept when we're talking about psychological health and safety. So that's first. Then there's actually a process that you can use for addressing any particular issue. If you have the ability to do a survey, to do an assessment, to use a tool like Guarding Minds at Work that's in the public domain, and you can actually identify where your areas for improvement are, rather than, throwing a dart and say, well, let's do this week. That's great. Then what you want to do is you want to, again, engage the leaders. Think about the leaders and their egos, because if we're saying we need to improve, you're also saying you're not doing it well enough. And we've got to bolster our frontline managers, our leaders, by saying, you are doing what we asked you to do. You're doing the best you can with what you know, but we have new evidence, we have new information, and we want to help you to do this. This isn't about necessarily your competence or lack thereof, but we really want to support you. What do you need from us to meet these outcomes? And you clearly communicate what the outcome is. So if it's recognition and reward, for example, so that we know that our people feel not valued, then it's not about let's get some more bling and give it to them, but it's really about what are the words that you use to support people. How do you recognize the effort as well as the outcome? How do you do this on a daily basis and make it specific and meaningful versus, the once a year pat on the back? And really supporting those people to do it and to do it well. You have to agree on how you will evaluate your outcomes. So to say to the managers, the supervisors, the team leaders in advance, let's talk about how we're going to evaluate this, so we're not trapping you and saying, oh, you're not doing it right. We're actually supporting you to be successful because you know how we're going to look at this. And then you ask them to go back to their team, have a conversation with, if they can, every single person on their team, saying, how is it that I can better recognize what it is that you're doing right? What are the sorts of things that mean something to you? How do you know that you're valued, that you're appreciated? What do you experience? And then you start to develop a plan based on what they said. Because you know what? For some people, that can be, like literally a pat on the back. For other people, no, I need you to recognize me in a public setting in order for me to feel valued. And for other people, they say, oh, I'd be so embarrassed. I'd really like you just to take a minute and stop and talk to me in the hall and say what it is you appreciate. Get that. And then you share the plans of action with the whole team, meaning all of the senior leaders, so that there's a sharing of ideas. There's a shared understanding, shared language that they can all use. And then you'd go and let them implement and evaluate. It's a process that's familiar to most people in the workplace. They just hadn't thought about it around psychological health and safety.
Right, and I think these tips are really important for us as organizations to be paying attention to. And I'm just wondering, we did receive an earlier question in registration where a participant asked if you could suggest the best way to respond to people who experience stigma, denial, avoidance, or even anger towards thinking about mental health at work.
Yes. So just my experience has been in helping people to return to work or stay at work when they have actually a diagnosed mental illness or serious mental health issues. And I couldn't understand why it was that some of them returned to work very successfully and some of them really struggled. And what it is that the organizational culture made such a difference between people who could be supported to do their work and people who were their symptoms were exacerbated and it was more difficult for them to do their work. The biggest thing that I say to individuals with a mental illness is don't expect the people to understand. You know that your family, your friends rarely understand, because until you've really been exposed to it or gone through it, it's not something that is common knowledge. However, we can teach people how to treat us when we're experiencing that. And the way we do it is we say, we want to be a good employee, and this is what I need in order to do my job well. Change the conversation from this is what I'm experiencing, you don't know what depression is, to this is what I'm experiencing, and in order for me to be a good employee, these are the things I need. Change the topic, change the language, and then find those people who can be your support system outside of that work relationship.
Perfect. And I just received a few questions here on whether the PowerPoint deck that we're showing right now will be able to be downloaded or available on the web. And I just wanted to say that's an emphatic yes, and we will be posting this in the next few weeks on the Mental Health Commission's website, so please stay tuned. Okay, so moving on back to our organizations, and Marianne, I'm just wondering, how do we get the best bang for our buck?
Well, and actually, right in the standard, we have an implementation guide. What if you have no money? What if the organization says, we don't have a budget for this? Well, that's okay, actually. You can do an awful lot with no budget. You can get your leaders to do that process I just told you with their own group. When Great West Life did this internally with their own staff, what they found is the process of having the discussions was as important as whatever the outcome or the plan was, that it opened up a dialogue that was positive, that was solution-focused, and that was getting people to think about the kind of workplace we want. And it really, in and of itself, is very successful. You can use free resources, and of course I'm a little biased because I help create the resources that are on workplace strategies for mental health. But I mean, there's so much that's available in the public domain that you could actually take, including Managing Mental Health Matters, which is online video-based training which can support your managers and supervisors to learn these skills, learn these approaches at no cost at all. So money shouldn't be the issue for this. What it is engage as many people as you can and get that conversation started.
I think that's important to remember, that all these resources are available to us. I just also wanted to make a note that if you're sending your questions to me as a host, I think it's better for you to actually chat and send it out to all attendees so that we're able to engage in conversation as Marianne and Linda present today. And thank you so much for taking part, because we really appreciate it. So Marianne, I'd like to ask what's actually involved when we're talking about improving psychological health and safety in the workplace. What are those key factors that we should be looking at?
So the factors come from research, from evidence. I always say that rock climbing and singing Kumbaya are nice, but they don't actually change the psychological health and safety in the workplace. But the other piece of that is this is not about the mental health of an employee. It's not about mental illness. It's about organizational approaches, procedures, policies, practices that impact the mental health of employees. So this isn't a big brother thing where we're going to look and say, well, how mentally healthy are you? This is something where we say, how are we impacting people? What's the hazard or the risk that exists in the workplace that could make people unwell? And let me give you an example. Workload management. A lot of people look at that. That's one of the factors, and they go, oh, yeah, sure, everybody wants to do half the work for the same pay. But that's not what workload management is. Workload management is a problem if people are working, 80 hours a week on a regular basis. Absolutely, that's got to change. But if a couple times a year people put that extra effort in, that's okay. That's normal. That's kind of expected. And if you're doing it in a good environment, you're actually excited by these projects, these, binding together to make something happen. Workload management, if I can explain, is if my boss is saying to me, look, if you don't get this done, our jobs are on the line, you need to get knuckle under, get this done, things are really bad around here and nobody knows what's going to happen. I'll probably, do what I can do, but that stress is going to really start to eat me up. If my manager said to me, you know what, Marianne, all I'm asking of you is do the best you can while you're here. If you are not sure what the priority is, because we'll never get it all done, ask me, and I'll sit with you and we'll prioritize what's most important, and let's just keep going. Do the best that we can. I'm going to do better work if I have that second type of approach than I would with the first type of approach. I'll probably be significantly more productive as well. So when we're looking at these things, it's about the approach that the organization takes. It's not about the amount of work. It's not about, being nice all the time. It's just being mindful.
Marianne, we just received a question from the public, and they're wondering, do you recommend the action guide for employers?
Oh, sure. The action guide for employers, it gives you some very practical ideas. This is written by Dr. Merv Gilbert and Dr. Dan Bilsker for the Mental Health Commission of Canada. And what they did is looked at some workplace interventions, programs, practices that actually had a positive impact. And again, maybe you can't implement the entire standard right now, but what if you took one of the things from their action guide, tried it out, had positive results, measurable results, then you've got leverage to say maybe we should do more, maybe we can have more better, maybe we can have more positive results. And that guide, I believe, is free for download, is it, Samantha?
Yes, that is correct.
Right, from the Mental Health Commission's website.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much for walking us through that, Marianne. I'm going to turn things over here to Linda, and I'm going to ask Linda, why was it important for your organization to focus on psychological health and safety in the workplace?
Well, no workplace is immune. It doesn't matter what size or what sector of work that it entails. We all need to have psychological health and safety. Over the last 30 years, most workplaces have made efforts to lower their incidence of work-related physical illness and injury. But over the same time, mental health and psychological health and safety have become a major concern for most workplaces. It's increasingly clear that there's a direct parallel between increased rates of work-related illness and accidents and periods of psychological stress, particularly in the workplace. Things like economic uncertainty, transition, mergers, and downsizing. I don't know of any company that hasn't been affected by this, so you can see that it's there. And when you consider that most adults spend more of their waking hours in the workplace than anywhere else, and now we're looking at many of our youth working at least part-time, you can see why psychological health and safety in the workplace becomes vital. At Waterloo, we want to have a work environment that's psychologically healthy and safe, and the standard gives us the tools to do that. The cost of not addressing mental health issues in the workplace are significant, and I'm sure I'm preaching to the converted when I say to you, we know that depression by 2020 will be ranking only second to heart disease. We know how that'll impact the workplace. We know that there's current and emerging legal requirements in Canada for the protection of psychological health and the promotion of civility and respect in the workplace. That's a factor in one of the key 13 factors that Marianne just had on the screen. We know, too, that organizations that value and improve the health of a workplace can improve their organizational profile. If you have a good profile, you're going to get better recruitment and retention. You're going to enhance your growth potential. So at Waterloo, we want our current and our potential employees to know that we value their contribution to the organization, and we want our employees to know that they do great work and that we want them to be successful. In my role as an occupational health nurse, I see employees daily who are having difficulties in the workplace. Often these difficulties are related to one of the 13 factors. When this happens, there can be lost time due to sick leave and or lost time to just poor functioning in the workplace, no matter what productivity has gone down. If you had a psychologically healthy workplace, you would keep your workers safe, engaged, and productive. Creating a mentally healthy workplace in all sectors of your organization benefits the worker, the family, and the employer, and in the long run contributes to the economic prosperity of our country. Mental health problems and illnesses account for about 30% of the short and long-term disability, and they're rated as one of the three top drivers of disability by over 80% of Canadian employers. When you look at those numbers, it's easy to see why the cost of not addressing these issues in the workplace becomes very significant. The workplace can contribute to mental well-being, and it can play an essential part in helping people attain their full potential. It can be a very stressful environment at times or ongoing, and it can contribute to the development of psychological problems, and it can be mental health issues such as depression and anxiety. So it's important to remember that many factors, some outside of the employer's control, can be affecting people, such as genetics, personal issues, family concerns, and financial challenges. Generally, an individual is responsible for his or her own health and well-being, whether they're in or out of the workplace. But the good news is that research shows us that if you put the right process in place, everyone can have a highly productive environment. A good framework for that to guide the organizations towards an effective and efficient manner is the standard, because it gives us evidence-based framework to deliver this. The University of Waterloo's top three issues, as I mentioned, that they're the drivers of disability claims, are mental health issues, cancer, and cardiac-related diseases. I've compared our numbers with other like-sized organizations across Canada, and I found that our claims aren't any different than anyone else's. Unfortunately, the cost doesn't just end with someone being off on disability. We lose productivity, and coworkers suffer because they're having to take on extra workload, and their morale and their health may also be affected. At Waterloo, I can say we want a workplace where people can work smart, contribute their best effort, be recognized for their work, and go home at the end of the day with some energy left over. Now, who wouldn't like that?
Mm-hmm.
The standard will promote this.
So, Linda, I've moved on to the next slide here, and I'd like you to talk to us a little bit about taking stock of where our organization is at right now in terms of workplace mental health. And how did you specifically at Waterloo, University of Waterloo, take stock?
Well, I have to say I became interested in the standard about 1 year before, because I had the fortune to be involved with Marianne at a session we were putting on for our employees. So I had some time to think about it. I kind of thought, well, okay, I'm going to go forward to senior management because I believe in this. And I went, and I wasn't successful. And I went there with a lot of enthusiasm and excitement, and I really just could not believe that they said, you know what, we agree with all of this stuff, but we've just got so many things pressing right now that need to be done that they're going to take precedence. I can't tell you how disappointed I was, but I spoke with Marianne, and she pointed out to me that I'd gone forward with my passion. And I can assure you there was lots of that. But I failed to realize that management, the people I was talking to, weren't there yet. I hadn't taken the necessary steps to prove to senior management what they needed to be able to buy into the whole process. I needed to regroup, and I needed to try again with a new strategy, which I did because I was determined. I spoke with colleagues who I felt have a vested interest in promoting the standard. I looked to people like our Conflict Management and Human Rights Officer, our Staff and Faculty Association members, our Organizational Human Development team. They do all the training on campus. I talked to the Human Resources Advisors and the union representatives. And when I told them what the standard was and what it was about, they became really interested because they saw value in their job for being able to make their lives a little easier if we were looking at this from a broad space. I went back and I looked through all of my records for absenteeism rates. I compared previous years to the last 5 months. I took those statistics, and lo and behold, our 5 months into the new year were much higher than the 12 months before already. I had noticed in my practice that when people already had a mental health issue, that they seemed to be able to cope well as long as work was going okay. But the minute work became, there were personal relationships that were failing, if the workload became unmanageable, those types of things, workplace stressors, then their absence didn't fall far behind that. It was as if they could come to one place where it was safe, they seemed to be able to cope well with all the other issues in their life. But if this place started, then that was the breaking point for them. So I looked at all of that. I added up the number of employees who had experienced workplace issues. And as their only reason for absence, and or that were a very significant contributing reason for absence. And I took this information and I kind of guesstimated the costs associated with that, taking into it my time being involved with the employee, maybe they'd been to HR, the manager's time because they weren't getting their work done in the area, maybe there had been some arbitration or some mediation. So I sort of looked at all that time and I said, and here's what happens on one case. This is how much money it costs us. Maybe we really need to look at how we can avoid that happening, or at least if it does happen and we have all the right things in place, we're going to decrease that amount. So I looked at our policies and procedures and I found that we had a lot of the 13 factors already embedded in our policy. But what I did see was that we weren't walking the talk. I think Marianne alluded to that. And we need to do that because actions will really speak louder than words. So I'm working with our group that writes policy to make specific references to the psychological health and safety standard with each one, and we're trying to roll out those specific points this fall. I used the 6 Ps that are planning, promotion, prevention, process, persistence, and policy. I looked at our organization and I thought, we're already doing some of the things that we need to get going on. So let's celebrate that. And when I pointed out to our management that, hey, we're already on the road, we just need to take more steps, they were more receiving of that information than, gee, we haven't done anything. I've rolled out some things for employees and have been doing over the last couple of years to try to reduce the stigma of mental health issues. We have a campus-wide mental health day in the fall. We have brown bag lunches. Our organizational human development conferences are every year, and we always include education about mental health. We're hoping that the new standard will help our workplace eliminate mental health or mental illness stigma. Removing the stigma would allow our faculty, staff, and students with problems to speak up without fear of repercussions. And I assured senior management that the standard does not measure, assess, or address individual mental health. It does focus on processes, systems, and interactions in the workplace. Like other health and safety initiatives, psychological health and safety helps to proactively prevent harm by identifying the risks and creating plans to reduce the hazards. So armed with this information, I asked for another meeting. I was granted it, and senior management said, go ahead. You can promote this, come to us, and let us know what you need us to do. So I was successful.
That's excellent, Linda. And just, you mentioned the 6 Ps framework, the planning, promotion, prevention, process, persistence, and policy, which is a mouthful. And I'm just wondering, did that come from the action guide?
I believe it did.
I believe it did too, yeah. Just so that our participants can follow up and download the action guide as well. So, Linda, once you took stock of your academic institution, you noticed that leadership needed more of a business case to improve psychological health and safety at work. Can you go through the steps that you took to engage the right people in your organization and keep that momentum up?
Okay, I did engage my champions and had them support me in this, but we had just on our campus undertaken a mental health review for our students. And I said to senior management, this is really great. We have this in place for our students, but if our employees don't understand what this is all about, they're not going to be there to help our clients, who are our students. So I started out by meeting with a number of groups on campus, staff and faculty relations, our union group, the undergraduate and graduate student relations, also with our health and safety group, and also our leadership forum, which is our senior management. And they were all really interested, and our students from the undergrads and graduate student relationship, they were very interested to know how we were going to do this, because they saw that if faculty understood, that they would be received better and would be able to function better if everyone was on the same page for what was healthy. I talked to senior management about it's our corporate responsibility. It's the right thing to do. We needed to protect our most important resources, our people. Preserve high-functioning faculty, staff, and students is really important in an organization like this. We talked about enhanced cost effectiveness, how we could decrease our sick leave and our LTD benefits. We talked about increased organizational recruitment and retention. We want to be an employer who can demonstrate caring and concern for our employees if we want to compete for the talent out there. And work-life balance is something that employees are looking for. So you have to have programs that actually demonstrate those qualities. We talked about improved risk management, decreasing the risk of legal and or regulatory sanctions, helping to avoid harassment, discrimination, human rights violations, reducing grievances. I answered questions before they were asked. I said, I know that you are afraid that you don't want to talk to these people about any issues in the department because you're not really wanting to know the answer, you don't really feel comfortable with it. But can I ask you that you think about the impact of absenteeism on your productivity, your morale of the coworkers, and your performance that you're getting from your department? I asked them to think about what a culpable absence was. And for those of you who maybe not have heard the word culpable in that context, it's for those people who are not really sick but take a day off. Well, the answers ranged, when they started to think about it, was from workplace conflict, work pressures, workplace stress, uncertainty in the job, lack of appreciation, and those were just a few that they came up with on the spur of the moment. So they began to realize the value of talking about psychological health and implementing the standards, so that we figured if we had those as an umbrella, that when problems did trickle down, they wouldn't be severe, we'd be able to handle them pretty quick. Everyone should understand that adopting best practices and encouraging an open and supportive mental health environment is going to be our approach at Waterloo, and people are very interested in that. The employees, managers, and leaders here all understand workload. They all understand workload management, engagement, civility, and respect, for example. So we say that it's now just natural to provide the same environment for our total community, which includes the students.
Okay, so I just want to interrupt your train of thought there, because I got an interesting question from one of our guests today, and they've asked if one of the speakers, and I'm wondering if Linda might be able to answer this one, could please elaborate on how to assess psychological risks in the workplace in the way that we design our jobs, and what resources specifically are available.
I think that Marianne can talk to the emotional intelligence that's really important when we hire managers, and I think it's really important when we're hiring that we make sure we have a really good job fit. Just because you're really good at putting all the widgets in the right space doesn't necessarily mean when you get promoted to manager that you're going to know how to put the right person in the right place to do their job.
And there's also a lot of tools now for the psychological demands of a job. And to really think about it, I had people that were in a call center, and the illness rate was really high. And when we started to look at it, they were dealing with what we call vicarious trauma. They had people phoning saying, I'm going to come there and kill you, or I'm going to kill myself, and yet they were just supposed to be selling something. And so nobody thought about their psychological health and safety. It was just, well, if that happened to you, just do this or whatever. And once they put in place a way to prepare people for that type of thing and a way to support people when it happened, their illness and absenteeism rate went way down, because a lot of the trauma that we have in a work setting is because we didn't expect it. It was something that blindsided us.
That's great. So I'm going to go back to Linda's story on how she engaged the right people and kept the momentum up. And I received another question from our audience, and they asked, Linda, how involved were the Joint Health and Safety Committee in the whole process?
They have been, the union members who are part of it have been very supportive, and actually when we look across section at the faculty members that sit on the committee, they've been good, and our advisors on the committee, they're all interested and they're all working with their departments. I didn't go to them first. It sort of came to them through the back door because I didn't want this to become, well, you need to implement this. It's got to happen. It's regulatory, because the standard is voluntary. And so coming in softly to them, I got their support. Others may find they need to go in harder, but our group is a really terrific group.
That's fantastic. So now as we move on to some planning and implementation considerations, I'm wondering, Linda, if you can just let us know what we should be thinking about.
I think the first thing is to find your champions and bring your team together. Look at what each member is already doing in their own specific area. And when you start talking between one another, you're able to not reinvent the wheel. You just can go in and maybe use someone else's idea and use it in that area. Evaluate what you're already doing. I guess that's probably the place to start. And plan and build on that. Workplace promotion, prevention, and anti-stigma initiatives, training for management and employee assistant programs all have a role to take. Efforts should include encouraging work-life balance, making sure that people have clear descriptions of their roles at work, facilitating their participation in deciding how work gets done, and implementing the policies. I mean, we have them there in books, they're on the shelf getting dusty, or in this day and age, they're on a CD sitting somewhere. We really need to make sure that we are making people aware of what those policies are and what we do mean by them. They're not just words, they're actions. We had brown bag lunches, and we're going to start this fall having one of the 13 factors at a time presented so that people understand what they mean. So there isn't perception of workload management means, oh yeah, I'm going to get rid of half my work. It's helping people to understand how that's going to be an advantage to them. I would really suggest, and I know that Marianne has said it before, that you go to the www.workplacestrategiesformentalhealth.com. They have a facilitator's guide there which you can use, and it will give you everything you need to go out and do the presentation. You don't need, all you need is somebody to deliver it. There's abundance of information available for everyone, and it's free. Use it. You're not reinventing the wheel. You're going out and just getting the message out. Remember, and this is a big one, the road to psychological health and safety is a journey. It's not a destination. It's a process that's continual, and you'll take steps forward, and then you'll stall, and then you'll continue on again. And I mean, don't set the boundary so high that you're not ever going to make it. Take little steps if you can, and if you can do a big step, that's great, but everybody has to take the first step. And I would say, too, to remember that it is everyone's responsibility. That includes the custodian, administration, managers, senior management, and the president. We all have a responsibility to enhance, if we're already started, which I think most people have, or implement and follow the standard for psychological health and safety, you can do it.
I'd just like to, oh, sorry, Samantha. I just want to add, too, that in unionized environments, having the union part of this, being part of improving and addressing psychological health and safety, is really a way to move it forward in a meaningful way and in a sustainable way. And for organizations that have good union relationships, you'll know this anyways. For those that don't have good union relationships, I really believe this is a starting point to share a value, which is worker well-being, and to work hand in hand in a collaborative way to move it forward. I've spoken to many unions, and they're very passionate about not only having this done, but doing it themselves, walking the talk. So I really encourage you to see them as included and as helping to champion this.
Perfect. So, Marianne, we're just going to move on to some resources. And for those of us who want some more help or understand what's available, where should we be looking?
So what you're showing there is a screenshot of the Psychological Health and Safety Management System that's on the Workplace Strategies website. And what we've done, it was actually Dr. Jody Samra, who was also a technical committee member, and myself, is we wrote sort of a guide. So if you are thinking about addressing psychological health and safety with or without the standard, with or without going the as Jody calls it, the full meal deal, this will guide you. It'll link you to the appropriate resources at the appropriate time, whether you're at the commitment and leadership stage, you're planning, you're implementing, or you're evaluating. And Samantha, if you just go to the next slide, I'll just say that we answer questions in a very sort of blunt way, like, you know, why should we do this, and is it about mental illness, and, you know, are you suggesting that we're solely responsible for people's mental illness? Are you kidding me? And are we opening a can of worms, and will this stress our managers out, and is it going to invade privacy? These are the questions that people were asking us as we were developing the standard, and so I wanted to provide the very blunt answers to those questions so that you can feel confident and you can answer the questions that are going to be asked of you. So, and I'm just, I was looking at the attendees. I just want to shout out to all my friends that are on this call and say hi. Haven't talked to you in a long time. Okay, Samantha, back to you.
Excellent. So just moving on, I know the next webinars we're going to be diving into the topic of communication, and our next slide here just highlights some of the people that we need to be thinking about when we're talking about communication. So just stay tuned for the next webinar, because there are a lot of considerations when we think about a communication strategy, and our upcoming webinar on August 28th will be revealing some of the things that you should be thinking about. So Marianne, we've talked a lot about where we can go for resources, but what are some of the targeted actions that we can do to keep that momentum going?
Yeah, I think the first thing is to read the standard in the annexes. I think a lot of people think it's way more complicated or complex than what it is. And once you read it, I think you get a better understanding that, oh, okay, either we're already doing this or we can do this. So that's the first thing. It's free. Download it from the CSA or BNQ website and have a look. The next thing is somebody's got to be a champion. Somebody has to take this up like Linda did and make sure that you have someone. The higher up they are, the better, but they don't have to be the top leader. They have to be someone who will do the convincing, who will do the work on the ground, and it can be a group of people. And then the other thing is, don't make this about having a huge big budget if that's not going to be possible. Look at what's already available through the Canadian Mental Health Association, through the Mental Health Commission of Canada, and other organizations that provide you with free resources that can help you on your way.
Fantastic. So I'm just conscious of the time here, and I want everybody to remember that we will have an opportunity for you to ask more questions in our upcoming webinars, which will be available on our website, the presentations at least, in English and French in the upcoming weeks. So I just wanted to remind that. In summary for today's session, I think it's important that we do remember that we're evaluating what we are already doing and continue to build upon this. We should be engaging leaders and other important stakeholders, and remembering Linda's message of implementation of psychological health and safety will be a journey. And then both of our presenters today have listed a number of resources that are available for us. That's including the National Standard for Canada for Psychological Health and Safety in the Workplace, the Workplace Strategies for Mental Health website, as well as a number of other resources available on our own website at the Mental Health Commission, including the Mental Health First Aid Canada program and the Aspiring Workforce and the Action Guide. We have been answering quite a few questions throughout the session. I did have one question that related to this being sort of an overwhelming task, and I wonder if you could just we could end off on this note, because I think a lot of organizations do find this overwhelming, and how can we make this more available for organizations to take that step forward, to realize that it's a journey, and to move forward?
So my answer to that, Samantha, is delegate, cascade it down, so that you bring together your human resources, your finance, your frontline managers, whoever your team leaders are, and say to them, okay, let's focus on trying to address this particular issue. Now you go and talk to your team about it. So it's not some big program where everybody's got to get engaged, but rather it's trickled down to the frontline people to work in their little group in order to start that dialogue. It doesn't have to be a great big framework. The framework's there for those that are further down the road and really want to know that what they're doing will be sustained.
Thank you so much. Just to wrap up today, I would just like to remind everybody that the date for the next webinar is August 28th at noon Eastern Time, and this one will be focusing on communication. So I do encourage everybody to ask questions before the next webinar, and we will be sending out a formal invitation. So those of you that are on the webinar today will receive that in the next coming week or so. And then please do fill out the survey that's available once the session ends, because it will inform future webinars. And again, this presentation, as well as future presentations, will be posted for free on our website in English and French. And just to remind you that you can check out our website as well as other resources that have been listed today. And I just wanted to say thank you so much to our guest speakers, Linda and Mary Ann. You have been fabulous, and we really appreciate you joining us today.
Great. Thanks, Samantha.
Thank you.
So this concludes our session for today. If you have any questions, please do email me at skolapak@mentalhealthcommission.ca. Thank you once again for joining us, everyone.